Hey everyone, this is Tankenstein coming to you live and direct from the middle of nowhere, the center of everywhere, to bring to you today your complete and comprehensive guide for crew stats and kind of how you should allocate them and what they all mean. It's a whole lot to go over, but I'll try to be getting this done in a fairly quick amount of time. I know there's quite a few long, 15 plus minute long videos on this. I'll try to make it shorter than that, make it sweet and to the point. Remember, please like, comment, and subscribe. Especially subscribing means so much to me. Without further ado, let's do this. So, really, I'll just kind of go over very first how you can get crew points. And essentially, you can just get them by completing objectives, by doing things in the game. So, if you destroy a piece of artillery, anti-air, if you destroy an enemy plane, if you bomb a base, really anything that earns you RP will also get you crew points. And you can go up to a maximum, at least insofar as aerial vehicles, to a crew level of 75. These crew levels are very important because each crew level gives you another, each experience point gives you more points to getting crew levels. And as you, let's say, put into, I'll go into my F9F here. If I put in 500 points here, or it'll be lower if you have fewer points already allocated to it, you can gain crew level, which then gives you the ability to upgrade to expert and various planes, and then from there to ace. So it's all very important and all links in, but let's just get into kind of the most basic thing here, and that's keen vision, and that's under the pilot tab. Essentially what keen vision is just your ability to see straight in front of you. That's really just simple as that. You will also have detection against the sun. So if the sun is really, if that's where your enemies are coming from, you will have a lower detection range by a substantial margin. It tends to be about a quarter of what you will have otherwise, just purely, I guess you could say, in front of you. And also the look down detection range is kind of your ability to see people depending on their altitude. So let's say if you are at 2 kilometers and you have a 1 kilometer look down detection range, that means that you'll be able to see plus or minus, so about up to 3,000 meters and down to about 1,000 meters insofar as altitude is concerned. And the air-to-air missile launch delay is essentially just the delay from being able to launch your missile from when you, really it's from when you can get them kind of locked into it. So it's not really all too important until you get up to the higher levels, but it does become kind of a concern. But there are many planes that people just choose not to use air-to-air missiles with because they're not always the most reliable, but they are becoming more powerful as the game goes on. So I mentioned before expert and whatever else in ace qualification, and these are ways to boost your crew skills without having to get a higher pilot level. So if you were to get expert, like for example with the A20G25, you can just buy those with Silver Lions. You do have to be a certain crew level to get expert, but once you get expert, you can start earning RP towards getting ace qualification, which is extremely important because with expert and ace, you can get an extra 5 skill points in any of these, and it goes to all of them. So I don't have to buy expert for keen vision and then separately for stamina, vitality, whatever. It's a one-time purchase and it goes to all the applicable skills, which is everything outside of experienced gunners and repair rank. So it's a very important thing, and ace does the same. So essentially, at least when it comes to keen vision, for example, you have a base of 3.8 kilometers insofar as how far forward you can see. If you were to have expert and ace, you can see up to 7.6 kilometers on top of maxing out your crew's allocatable stats for it. So it's a big deal. It gives you a big advantage, or more so, it just kind of levels the playing field with anyone that might have higher stats than you. It's very, very important to remember. And again, you can get those by completing basically just tasks in the game. And another very important thing to note is that you can earn a ton of points with, let's say, your B-29, and then you could put those points into your other vehicles as you see fit, so ground and naval vehicles. So the crew on my third slot here, is applicable to every single vehicle on that slot. So it's very important to note and something that, it plays a huge part in this game because you can be really good at tanks and not that good at that at the plane you have selected for that. So you can get your crew points and tanks, and then switch over to your plane, and then put those crew points wherever you want. So it's a pretty big deal. So when it comes to, but separately, you do have separate skills in each of these. So your crew experience points can go towards your air vehicle, but if you have vitality with your pilot, it doesn't mean that your driver and your tank will have equal vitality. So that's just something to note. When it comes to awareness, this is your overall 360, basically your spherical, I guess you could say, detection range. So you have a max of about 3/4 of a kilometer in realistic. So if someone was behind you and no one else saw them on your team, you have a 3/4 of a kilometer detection range max and just under 4/10 of a kilometer base. So this could be behind you at an angle, on your wing, whatever the case may be. This is your ability to detect them. And your allies can also help you detect planes, so that's fairly important. And this is also all considering that there's no obstructions to your vision, like clouds or poor weather, or maybe it's dark out. So, and if it is dark out, these might not be all too, I guess you could say, effective, because you'll notice, especially in realistic, when you have a really dark map, if it's nighttime, especially if the weather's poor, there might be very few, if any, kills. Rather, people just stick to objectives in those matches. G tolerance is fairly explainable, or fairly, I guess you could say, obvious. The higher the G tolerance, the more Gs you can take. So if you're in extreme maneuvers, your pilot will be able to handle them a bit better without blacking out or redding out. Redding out being, let's say if your plane is flying straight and level and you were just go down without rolling it, then you can red out with all the blood rushing to your head. Otherwise, the blood would kind of rush away from your head. And redding out is much more dangerous. I guess you could say it's less common, but it's easier to red out, and it will also kind of knock you out for a little bit longer. Stamina works in with that. So when it comes to getting your stamina skill up, you have a really just a base of 5 seconds when it comes to return time. So if you were to totally, G out your plane, your pilot, then you will be able to get your stamina back in 5 seconds max, down to 2.5 seconds minimum time. And also with the expert and allocatable, you can get it down to 3. As you can see with the gold bar, that's the allocatable crew stats, and also the, I guess you could say, the silver badge there, that's the expert, and kind of the modifier that those various points give you. Stamina loss time, that's just kind of your ability to endure the various, I guess you could say, punishments to your pilot in the way of G-forces, and also stamina loss time at negative. As you can see, your pilot can sustain them for a much lower period of time. The absolute max on negative Gs for your crew time is the absolute minimum on positive Gs. So it's something very important to try to keep away from the minimum Gs. And vitality, this is just your ability to stay alive for a longer period of time. So kind of the example that they have here is if you're shot with a 303 bullet, this kind of means that if you have base health, then you can get shot once and maybe you'll survive, like you'll probably die in the second shot. Shrapnel, explosions, all of that do affect your pilot health. And you'll notice, especially at low levels, whether you're just starting to play the game or you're just starting up on a new nation or within an inexperienced crew, your pilots will more likely die than your plane simply because you have no vitality, and your pilots will just not outlast your plane. So it's a very important thing. When it comes to defensive armament, this is exclusive more or less to bombers. There are some heavy fighters out there, like with the Germans, that do have gunners, but it's not really all too common. So I'll go over the Wellington because it's a little bit better of an example. In my case, I've only got 2 out of the 4 gunners here that are experienced. And really, if you do not have a fully experienced crew, each bomber has different amounts of gunners. Some can have up to 10, I believe. Some can have as low as 2. But really, the higher the amount of experienced gunners relative to how many positions there are for gunners, the less of a debuff that you'll have. So as you can see here, I've got a slightly negative debuff when it comes to everything. And it doesn't mean that I've got 2 experienced gunners and 2 inexperienced gunners. It doesn't really function like that in game, but rather it means that your debuff will be greater the fewer experienced gunners you have compared to how many total gunners you have. So let's say if you have 7 gunners and 6 out of the 7 are experienced, your debuff will be very, very minimal. It used to be a bigger deal, but they did decrease kind of how much of a weight it was on your team. So when it comes to fire accuracy and fire precision, they're fairly similar. Your target tracking range, the target tracking probability, and also burst duration are shared between these two, and you have to get these up both maximum so you can kind of enjoy those benefits at the top. But when it comes to firing range, that's basically the absolute minimum that your gunners will start firing at the enemy. More likely than not, they'll kind of start firing at 7 or 8 tenths of a kilometer, and you can also manually get into your gun to fire at enemies. Target tracking range is just kind of the range, again, the absolute minimum that your plane will start tracking. Your AI gunners will start tracking the enemy with their turrets. Simultaneous firing and target tracking probability is just kind of the probability that you will have numerous gunners at the same time tracking and shooting at the enemy. So at low levels, it's not really all too common. But, if both of them have sight and basically have an open field of fire on the enemy, this is just more or less your chance to do so. Targeting speed is just kind of your turret rotation speed, kind of like on a tank, but in a plane. It's fairly important, but it's not really all too big of a difference between base and top, but it can make a difference depending on how fast your enemy fighters are. And also maximum burst duration, as you can imagine, that's just kind of your burst duration, but for AI. If you were to get into your guns or your defensive armaments, you should be able to fire quite a bit longer than that, but that's just how long your AI can handle it. Fire precision is very similar. Again, target tracking range, probability, and burst duration are also modified by this, so those will go up regardless. So for example, I'll just increase this right here. So I've got 0.56 total max burst duration on both of these. If I were to increase this, if it goes up to 0.57 and 0.57. So it all contributes to the max, and it's fairly important in that way. G tolerance, it's the same exact, well actually before I get into G tolerance, fire scattering, that's just basically the degrees of, I guess you could say, fire, like how big of a field of fire that you're going to have, and the higher your fire precision, the tighter of a field of fire it will be. It might not seem like a big difference between your base of 1.93 scattering and 1.4 degrees of scattering, but over the course of 3/4 of a kilometer, or even more so a kilometer, that can be a big difference, and you can end up missing a fairly small BF-109, for example, pretty substantially if you do not have that tight. I mean, after all, that's about 25% difference, so it's a pretty big deal. And it could also mean the difference between hitting the enemy engine and maybe a wingtip, so it's a pretty big difference. G tolerance is essentially the same as with the pilot. For bombers, it won't be all too important, but it can be. It more likely than not, you will not be pulling any high G turns with bombers, but I guess it's possible. Stamina is the same as with pilots. Again, you will likely not be doing any crazy maneuvers, but it can be possible. Out of these three, I'd say vitality is the most important. Gunners on your bombers will be very, very much in the field of fire, and oftentimes they will die. So by having vitality up higher, you'll have a much greater chance of having a sustained defensive fire, because ultimately once you knock out 1 or 2 bombers or 1 or 2 gunners, then that could be it. You have no defense against anyone, and they're not coming back. So it's a pretty big deal. When it comes to logistical services, I'll switch back to the B-29. This is more or less just kind of your ground crew. So repair speed, this just kind of goes over the in-hangar repair time. That's for you to get your free repairs. So if you do not feel like spending, again with the B-29, around 40,000 Silver Lions, you could technically turn off your automatic repairs and then just kind of wait for this to time out, and then you'll get a free repair. It's not really worth it in my opinion. Most people don't do it, but that is possible. Repair rank, that's just the rank up to... that's just really the rank that your ground crew can repair your vehicles. So the F-4C, for example, is a rank 6. If I had this at rank 5, then that would mean that I can still repair it. It just won't be as efficient. Kind of like how lack of experienced gunners is a debuff on these stats. It's kind of like a debuff on these stats. So it's not like or mostly just on repair speed. So it's not like a big deal, but it can matter, especially when it comes to maximum on-air repair time or minimum on-air field repair time. If you're playing realistic, it can impact your gameplay. Reload speed is fairly obvious. It's just the rank or the rate at which you reload. For arcade, this means that you can reload in the air. So this is very important, especially when it comes to bombers, because you can go from a 60-second bomber reload time to 30 seconds, which means that you can drop 2 times the bombs in the same amount of time, which is huge, absolutely huge, and it's definitely a very big deal, especially if you're looking to maximize the efficiency of your plane. Same goes with guns, so you can simply reload in the middle of the air. If you're really looking to minimize time outside of a dogfight, this is what you should go for. It's one of the most important stats in the game across every single type of crew, whether it's air, ground, or naval. And weapon maintenance, finally. Also this does decrease your on-airfield reload time pretty substantially. So if you're playing realistic, this is also something that you want to do. Finally, weapon maintenance basically is just your chance to decrease, or your ability to decrease your chance of weapon jamming. Essentially, let's say if you were to fire your guns until the reticle turns red, if you have a maximum I guess you could say weapon maintenance level, this is with ace and expert as well as max allocatable, then you have a 33.33 or a third of a chance really to have your weapon jam. So if you have 3 of the same exact type of cannon, then that means that there's a good chance that 1 out of those 3, when you pull off the trigger and it's flashing, will become jammed. If you have a 100% chance, the more likely than not, really, they're all going to be jammed, and that's quite a problem. You have no way of attacking or defending yourself. Bomb scattering, again, is fairly obvious. The higher you are, the larger the bomb scattering is, and this kind of keeps your targets tight. So it should be, if it all scales up at 2,000 meters, you should have around 35 meters of bomb scattering if you have the top level of this, or 70 if you have the base. And as you can see here, 35 meters at the base, 17 for the top. Again, this is at 1,000 meters. So it all kind of ties in, and really crew experience is just your way of making your plane and your crew as efficient as possible. Either way, I hope you guys like my video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think of this. I hope I was helpful. Either way, I hope you guys have a great day, a great night, and great whatever it is you're doing. And hope you guys take care. And again, really just enjoy life. Thanks for watching, everyone, and take care, everyone.